The alarm woke her up. 25% oxygen. Denise was afraid to open her eyes, thought about going back to sleep. But the alarm would just wake her again when the life pod dropped to 20%. The tiny craft had spun around since she closed her eyes. Now the earth hung before the forward windshield. Asia turned in front of her. It would only be a matter of minutes before she could see Africa and Europe. The hatch to the back cabin opened. A beaten, battered, and bruised Damien Vandella of the Argentine medical team floated in zero gravity towards the empty co-pilot seat. At least now she knew why the oxygen was going so fast. She wasn't alone. How many? Asked Denise. The hoarse, tortured sound of her voice even surprised her. 5, including us. The sun was behind them, and while it was irrational, Denise felt like it was slowly cooking them like a potato baking in aluminum. From orbit, Earth looked like a blue and white marble. Having lived in the International Space Station for the entire 30 years of her adult life, Denise was used to the view. It had changed. White splashes of cloud cover, quickly moving storms were gone. They only had a few minutes warning when the Lunar Observation Post issued the warning. Solar storms hit the station all the time. The station would rumble. They might lose gravity, and a few days of radiation treatments meant loose stool and long lines at the bathrooms. Damien strapped himself into the seat and stared out the window. Pieces of the station were moving through orbit with them. He wondered how many people, too small to see, were out there in orbit floating. Captain? Denise didn't want to respond. For the first time in her years in the service, she regretted fighting her way up the ladder. He would want a way to survive. She had none. What happened? Below them, the earth turned, and they moved quickly over Europe. She almost didn't recognize it. The Mediterranean was as brown and dry as the Sahara. The rivers that once twisted through the landscape were gone, and the ancient forests were spitting up gray dust. The fires died quickly as the atmosphere on planet Earth burned off. It had been midday over Europe. The cafes in Spain were loaded for the long lunch breaks. The beaches in France were crowded with vacationers, and in England the rioters were gathered for afternoon of football. Solar storm, a doozy. He heard her, but was too stunned to respond. Every time the storms came and the station shook, she wondered, would it hold together? Could the station built by human hands protect them from the power of the universe? Where do we drop back to Earth? She felt like screaming. Couldn't he see what was happening? The 23.87% oxygen level on the life pod was probably better than old Mother Earth could provide at this point. The bubble that was Spaceship Earth has structural integrity problems, and that meant landing was not an option. Despite this reality, Damien insisted on sucking down oxygen to speak. What can we do? Denise said nothing. Captain, we can shut the fuck up and quit wasting O2. The Atlantic Ocean was almost gone. Burned away, it looked like a series of mountain ranges and plains. They could waste O2 gasping, but they shouldn't. Damien cried softly. Denise had noticed him before. Hotshot doctor, new to the station, sexy Argentine accent. She couldn't imagine how he thought of her, or if he even did. But he called her captain because of what was on her uniform. I'm Denise. Damien looked at her. It was odd, but he smiled at her. The last thing he should be doing right now is smiling. What would he say? It certainly wasn't nice to meet her, not now. I know. Any other day she might have smiled at that. In the corner of her vision she could still see the oxygen levels. Damien followed her eyes to the oxygen readout. He tapped it. That's it, huh? Denise nodded. Nothing left of the station. Denise looked out the windshield. A body was moving through orbit towards them. A woman in her 20s, not even in her uniform. Her clothes were frozen to her body. Her arms looked like they were waving wildly when she hit vacuum. Denise felt some relief that she would asphyxiate before the brutal cold of space swallowed the pod. Nothing left to do. I'm sorry. The alarm buzzed. 20%. Denise felt betrayed. It was draining too fast. She shook her head and fought back tears. She almost said no, but was scared to speak. Her heart beat faster, but that would steal her breath. Suddenly she felt something touch her fingers. She looked to her left hand. Damien held out his. Denise looked at his open hand. You don't have to be alone. Their hands met, and Denise felt instant relief. Damien gripped her hand tight, and he never let go.